Time permitting, our guest speaker will take questions at the end, so please post them during the webinar in the question box in your control panel throughout the presentation, and we'll get your response to any questions that we're not able to answer now. We're thrilled to have with us today business continuity's foremost employment expert, Cheyenne Marling, founder of BC Management. Whether you're looking for your next promotion or you're going to be hiring the next member of your team, the interview is often the deal maker or breaker. Today, Business Continuity Management President and ACP National Board Secretary Cheyenne Marling discusses how you can get the most out of your interview, whether you're in front of the desk or behind it. Cheyenne will discuss questions the employer should ask, questions a prospective employee should ask, what if it's a phone interview and how that's different, how one should prepare, and questions like, do I really need to wear a suit? You'll be better equipped to get your next job or hire the right person. Cheyenne has been an executive recruiter for 17 years, with 15 of those years specializing in the business continuity field. Don't try to do the math. She apparently started working when she was 3. Her career as an executive recruiter began in Madison, Wisconsin, shortly after graduating from University of Wisconsin-Madison with a bachelor's degree. In Madison, she placed professionals at all levels, from programmers and accountants to professors. Shortly after moving to Southern California in '98, she joined Management Recruiters International. She immediately began recruiting in the business continuity field. She quickly recognized that business continuity was getting lost with the company's large portfolio, and she decided to form a new company solely dedicated to business continuity and founded Business Continuity Management, BC Management, in 2000. Cheyenne's become an integral part of the business continuity community, previously serving on the board for the LA and Orange County chapters, and she's currently an active professional on the editorial advisory board for Continuity Insights magazine. She's also the recipient of the inaugural ACP Hall of Fame Award in 2006, and most recently she was awarded an honorary MBCI by the Business Continuity Institute in 2010. Please join me in welcoming Cheyenne Marling, and good afternoon, Cheyenne.
Thank you so much, Ed. Welcome everyone today. We're going to be talking about how to really sharpen your interview skills, and this presentation today applies if you are a hiring manager or an individual looking for your next job opportunity or looking for that promotion. There are so many things you need to keep in mind, and I'm certainly going to make today's presentation very relevant within our profession of business continuity, disaster recovery, crisis management, because I have some interesting stories that will help give you insight when you go in for your next interview that certainly apply. So today's outline, we're going to talk about some of the best practices for interviewing. There's a lot of do's, a lot of don'ts, pitfalls to avoid. I have some interview questions. In fact, I have a link to the top 100 interview questions that is incredibly helpful to go through, even if you're an employer or a candidate looking to go through the interview process. We're also going to wrap up the interview in discussing how to really make sure that you hone in on your skills and keep your marketability to be a top talent in this profession. What are companies really, really looking for within this profession for top talent individuals, as well as some helpful hints just overall on career searching today. So let's just start off, what do companies want? They want individuals who can be team players. They want someone who can hit the ground running. Someone who can think outside of the box. Business continuity is certainly not cookie cutter, so looking for individuals who can think outside the box, find creative solutions, someone who understands the politics of working across multiple levels within an organization. When you're in this profession of business continuity planning, you need to be able to work with the end users all the way up to the CXO, to the chief executive level. So really having that ability to think outside of the box, especially in this profession, really being a champion of the program is very, very critical. So going forward here, companies, now if you are a hiring manager, you have your position that you're looking to fill, and now what? So let's focus first on the company perspective. So you have your 1, 2 headcount approved. You don't just want to start jumping in and just start interviewing candidates. You really want to put together a recruitment strategy, really put together an intelligent interviewing scheme to follow. So first, think about the type of interviews that you want. So you want to think about, if you're going to do the phone interviews, if you're going to do, and we're going to go through each of the interviews as well, but really kind of put together your interview schedule, who to include within your organization. It's not just yourself. It could be some individuals within your executive level. It could be individuals that this person would be interacting with. And certainly human resources should be included in the process as well. Really make sure that you put together a documented, systematic approach. So think about everyone who's involved in the interview process, what types of interviews, how many interviews, and you may even want to talk as an interviewing team on who is going to ask which questions. And as you develop those questions, you want to make sure that you also develop benchmarks so you can score and properly compare each candidate to each other, so you ensure that you're just not getting kind of tied in emotionally to one particular individual. You're really judging them for their qualifications they bring to the table. We're also going to talk about the blunders you need to avoid. There's certainly some questions that are illegal to ask. So as an employer looking to fill a position, we're going to talk about some of those blunders, and one specifically that I've seen in this industry. So moving forward, the types of interviews, of course, there's the screening interviews that may be done by your human resources department. It could be a telephone interview. You may even do a video conference interview. If someone is going to have to fly in, you may want to do that video phone chat, WebEx meeting before going through and taking the time to fly the individual and put them up overnight in a hotel. Then the next would be, of course, selection. You may have a one-on-one interview. You may have a group or panel interview and who you want to include in those interviews. I've seen several types of interviews at this level that are situation, where they'll try to put someone in a particular situation, see how they respond, talk to them as far as examples of what they've done in business continuity in the full life cycle, their experience in rolling out a program, their experience responding during a specific event. Could be kind of maybe a stress type of interview question. I've also seen companies will have individuals get up and give a presentation. That's kind of an audition, and they may have to do it to a board or a panel. Behavioral interviews are certainly very important because you can use certain behavior questions that fit your organization to see how the person may react. Especially in our industry, again, you are having to respond to events. And companies want to make sure that when an event happens, first and foremost, you've been there, you've done it, you've been in those types of situations before, but more importantly, how do you react? What did you learn from it? There's also behavioral questions around how did you handle meeting a tight deadline? How did you handle if you did not quite perform in your last position? How did you work around it to fix a certain situation? How did you work with a subordinate that was a little bit of a challenge? So think about some behavioral questions that you want to put together as a hiring manager. You can also look at maybe something that's a reverse role. How would they handle a situation if you were not there? If you were there, if this individual were to be your backup, how would they behave or react in a certain situation? There's also a lot of testing. Since I'm the recruiting side and making the matches, I'm not the one that's really involved in the testing stage. I leave that to my clients. But your company may have some testing that you want to be familiar with as it comes up in the process. So again, keeping on the company perspective, panel interviewers, of course, you always want to include your human resources. You want to look at who on the management team should be involved, and also coworkers, someone that this person, if they were hired, they would work very close with. So for example, business continuity, if your BC and DR team are siloed, you certainly want to avoid, not avoid, but include the person from the other part of the program, so they can also assess that this is someone they can work with. My only word of caution is when you're putting together your interviews, and I'm going to talk a little bit about this in the blunders as well, but sometimes if you include too many people, it's hard to please everyone, so you want to make sure you include the people that really are going to come into play with making the decision to hire the person or not. And sometimes if you include too many people, you have too many steps in the process, and especially now people are being picked up very, very, very quickly, that if there's too many steps and your interview process is really drawn out, you could lose someone that has another offer from another company. So again, looking at the company perspective, as I mentioned, you want to develop a documented, systematic process So really kind of detail and make notes and give this to your human resources department on how many interviews you plan on having, what's the timeline. When you think about the timeline, you have to make sure that the interviewing team realizes that they have to open up their schedule. If this is a critical position, you hate to have the person interview and then a week later have another interview, and then a week later, I mean, if it's drawn out too much, you're going to lose the person's interest. You also want to take in consideration around the holidays and summer. There's a lot of vacations. So make sure that you have a good understanding of people who are on your interviewing team, what their availability is before you include them in the process. Look at the scoring method. Make sure that everyone on the interviewing team is in sync for the scoring method that's going to be used, who's asking which questions, and make sure that you're putting together a fair comparison, again, so you're not getting too emotionally tied to one particular individual. You're really judging them across the board. And again, make sure that you sync everyone in the interviewing process so everyone knows what their role is, what the scoring method is, the timeline. Another situation that I actually just had come up with one of my clients. I had a global business continuity manager who was interviewing for a director level underneath her, and she wanted someone with supply chain management, business continuity, global business continuity experience. One of the individuals she had on her interviewing team was in information security, and this person would work closely with the information security individual. Well, what happened is kind of a blunder, is the first time that person went in for the interview and met with that information security manager, he asked the person to get up in front on a whiteboard and start charting information security solutions and very, very technical, which the position was not. So the person walked away not even wanting to go forward in the next step, because that individual who was included in the process really put them under the gun with something that wasn't even a part of the job description. So they had to kind of hone that person back in and kind of bring that the interviewer from information security, kind of make him understand what the role was that he was supposed to be interviewing for. So just something so simple that you think is pretty apparent, you don't want to assume anything. So again, keeping on the company perspective, interviewing questions. You want to make sure that you have interviewing questions that are really going to assess your culture. And this does come into business continuity planning more so than many other industries, because you can write a great business continuity program for one company, but it's not going to work for another company. Culture is very, very key. If you're looking at the skills and not the culture as you're conducting your interview, you are not going to get the person that you need. The person's not going to be happy in the long run. So think about the culture, think about the type of personality that's going to fit best within your culture, within your company, and really determine the credentials and the competency match that is going to work as well. So if this person is going to be doing a lot of presentations to executive management, is this person going to be responding during an event? Is this person going through working with all the different departments, so they need to have very, very strong personality, personable skills, communication skills? Are they developing presentations, PowerPoint, training materials? So think about some of the credentials that come into play and make sure that you really interview for those credentials and competencies. Think about, again, kind of behavioral questions. How quickly do they need to think on their feet? How much are they working with executive management? You want to make sure that you ask specific behavioral questions that hone in on those skills. Maybe take a look at your top performers that you currently have in your team, or top performers you've had in the past. What were some of the skill sets or some of the specific examples on how they reacted in situations, and interview for those same behavioral patterns with your slate of people that are coming in for the interview. Ask very open-ended, probing questions. So don't just ask something that would lead to a yes or no answer. Ask a question that would get them talking about their background, about their experience, about their actual situations that they had to respond to. You also want to make sure you avoid any improper legal questions, anything that could be binding that makes them think that they have the job opportunity. And one thing I do want to point out here that's not quite a bullet point is that as you're developing your interviewing questions and as you're including human resources in the process, one thing that I want to point out that does come into play with the candidates you'll be interviewing is that the job description that you give to human resources, if it requires, let's say, 5 years experience, financial business, 5 years plus business continuity experience within a financial industry, must be certified, must have a degree, or even if it's a strong plus. A lot of human resources, when they see that, they will put someone to the side if, for example, if they don't have the certification or if they don't have a degree. So you could be missing on individuals that are excellent matches to your organization, to your program. So you want to be very careful with the message you communicate to your human resources department, so they are bringing you the candidates that could be very good potential matches. Another thing that I would like to point out here, and it kind of ties into the culture and credentials match, is that you want to think about the long-range plan of your program. Who's going to work best for your program now? Who's going to work best with the people you currently have on your team? And who's going to work best for your program 5 years from now? So really kind of put together not just what your program needs now, but what your program needs and company needs 5 years out as well. And we're almost done with the company perspective. We'll get into the candidate perspective. So of course, here's some sample questions to ask. What are your weaknesses? Why should we hire you? So the basic interview questions that everyone's accustomed to, of course. Then you have the behavioral interviews, or behavioral questions, of course. So get them talking about maybe if there's a situation where they missed a deadline, how did they react to that? If they had to ever activate a program during an event, what occurred during the event? What did they walk away? What did they learn from the event? How did they maybe have to deal with a challenging subordinate? So think about some behavioral questions as well. Compensation, of course, this is going to come up because you want to make sure that you just don't get to the offer. If human resources isn't taking care of this, you want to make sure you don't get to the offer, the final end, and the person is $30,000 above what the position's looking to pay. So compensation, of course, is going to come into play. Candidates, when we're going to address this question later on for the candidate perspective as well, because you should be expecting the compensation question to come up, even if not in the interview, on the application itself. Probing questions. Why did you leave your last job? Why are you looking to take on this job opportunity? What are your goals? Some good probing questions to get them talking more than just a yes or no answer. Some brain teasers. Now, fortunately, a lot of my hiring managers don't ask too many brain teasers, but there are some good ones that come up. If you were an animal, which one would you want? What animal would you want to be? So it gets them, and these are great questions because not to purposely throw the person off that you're interviewing, but it gives you some insight on who that person is, aside from just their skills within business continuity. Because think about it, when you're interviewing, you want to interview someone that you enjoy working with, not just someone who can do the job, but someone you're going to enjoy working with. So some of those fun brain teasers, they may seem a bit unfair, but it also shows that the person can think quickly on their feet, and they're more than just, they're a person. They're a person, they have interests. So those are they could be some funny questions sometimes. Here's a link to the 100 top interview questions. I'm sure you can even Google it and come up with a couple other ones. But some very interesting questions I'm not going to include today, but wanted to include the link, of course, for everyone to view. Now, we're going to talk about sample questions that companies' hiring managers should avoid. Anything about children, family, or childcare. You don't want to ask who's going to take care of the children when the person's at work. You don't want to even ask if they have backup in case the child's sick. Anything to that degree is a question you want to avoid. You don't want to ask if they happen to say they're recently married. You don't want to ask when they're planning on having children. That's a big, big no-no. And if the person is with the Army Reserve or what have you, you don't want to ask how often they might be deployed. Anything that would inhibit them from coming into the job, anything that's personal, is off the record. Even something as simple as how'd you get that scar, how'd you get that mark, how'd you get that physical abnormality, anything that could come back as something as a legal question should not be asked. A lot of people will think that it's okay to ask if they've ever been arrested. You can ask, so it's legal to ask whether candidates have been convicted of a crime, but not if they've been arrested. So usually this comes up in the background check, in the application itself. So usually interviewers really should not be concerned about that, or even asking a question, because it should be addressed in the application. But again, you don't want to ask these type of questions because it could be something that's been dismissed without a conviction, or maybe the original charges may have been lowered to lesser charges. So again, you don't want to get in a big HR no-no. And if anything, your HR department should have questions that the list of questions that should be off the record, that your entire interview panel should have to avoid any of these blunders. So once you are interviewing candidates, you want to make sure that you really benchmark them appropriately, make sure that the team understands how the candidates are going to be evaluated, have a point system assigned to how they answer some of the questions. And again, this is really to make sure that they're not getting tied in emotionally to one particular candidate. So blunders to avoid, you want to make sure that you really do look at not just the skill set, but also the culture fit. Pleasing everyone in the interview team, you want to make sure that you include the individuals that are really going to be interacting with this person heavily. This should really be a part of the interviewing team. And the more people you have, you could have everyone in the interviewing team like an individual except for one person. Well, then what do you do? So really think through that before you get to that point. Definitely keep enough candidates in the process. My biggest frustration is when companies I give them 4 candidates and they just select one. I can't tell you how frustrating that is, because most people, even if they weren't actively looking and I approached them on a job, once you approach someone on a job, it gets them thinking. They start looking, well, I just put my resume together. I wonder how many other jobs are out there. So keep in mind that if you're interviewing that candidate, they're likely in the hopper for maybe 3 to 5 other job opportunities. So make sure that you have enough candidates in your process so you're not losing them to other jobs. Consider backup options. If you need to hire someone quickly because of an audit, because of an exercise coming up, whatever it may be, maybe bring in a consultant while you continue to interview for your direct hire permanent role. The last thing you want to do is feel pressured to make a hiring decision and you jump too quickly. So if you can have backup options, get someone in on a consulting basis, a contract, while you continue to interview for the permanent role. Don't delay the process. This is such a huge frustration, because someone will interview and then maybe 2 weeks later they get a call back for another interview. That really starts to give the interviewer cold feet. Interviewee cold feet. So you want to make sure that you continue to move the process forward. Again, communication to the entire interviewing team is so very crucial. And you yourself, if you're interviewing someone, don't spend the entire time talking about the company or the job or the program. Really make sure that you keep on task with asking the questions you need to ask to assess the person. Because if you're spending the whole time selling the program, the company, or the job opportunity, you're not taking any of the time to really assess if the person's going to be a fit for the job or not. So now we move on to the candidate section. And just as companies are looking for what they want for their program, for their team, you need to think about what's going to work best for you. So you may not want to be a chief risk officer. You may not want to be a chief continuity officer or a global head, because you may have certain situations with your work that you want to keep a work-life balance. So think about, before you even start interviewing, put together your checks and balances, where you want to be now, where you want to be 5 years from now, what's your career roadmap, and write that down, because you may not be happy doing a position that's high stress, a position that's a global head where you're responding to events and disasters on a worldwide basis. You're taking those calls from India at midnight. So really think about what you want before you start jumping into the interview process. It's always very, very important to understand the market, understand, kind of see what types of jobs are out there, so you can see, what companies are hiring for, what are some of the credentials they're looking for, so you can map that back to your resume. Create opportunities for yourself. So, especially if you're looking for that promotion within your current company, don't think that your hiring manager is necessarily thinking about your career. So try to think and create opportunities. If you love your current company, you love your program, you love who you report to, you love your team. Think outside the box and think about how you can create opportunities within your current company, and really develop a roadmap so you can achieve what you want to accomplish with your career. So your resume is in the door, you submitted, and now what do you want to do? A lot of people at this step, and I see it all the time, they get worried, they get impatient, they want immediate feedback. Keep in mind a lot of companies will post a job, but they don't have the job officially open for maybe a month out, to whatever it may be. So individuals will submit for a job opening and they're wondering why they haven't heard back. What's taking so long? Are they not a fit? So just be patient. While you are waiting to hear back from your resume, there's some things that you can start doing to keep yourself busy. Looking at your skills, thinking about how you'd answer some of those questions. Think about the full life cycle of business continuity planning. How have you been involved in interacting with management? How have you been involved in rolling out a training program? How have you been involved going through a BIA and really leveraging the findings from a BIA? What types of different exercises have you done to exercise your plans? How have you worked within a group setting? How have you been involved in activating the program for an event? What types of events have you activated a program for? So really start reviewing your skills and thinking out how you would answer some of these questions. And then also go back to that 100 top questions and start practicing. Those are questions that aren't necessarily related to business continuity, but they're, a lot of those questions are going to come up, of course. Really think about your contributions, some of your achievements with your company. This is a situation where you should not be afraid to brag. I mean, of course, you don't want to brag too much, but when you go in for an interview, you want to showcase what you've contributed to the program, your past programs. What have you contributed to the past companies? What have been some of your achievements, specifically within business continuity planning? Maybe budget, meeting a deadline, on time, under budget. So think about some of those achievements, write them down. Start thinking about how you can work those into the discussion, because the interviewer may not say what have been your contributions or what have been your achievements. So you need to think about, how can I work this in? Keep options open. Don't just think obviously you don't want to just send your resume to one job. So if you're actively interviewing, once you decide where you want to be with your career and what you want to target, look for those job opportunities. Keep the options open in case another great opportunity comes up. So you're now scheduling interviews. Now how do you continue to get ready? Research, research, research the company. I can't begin to tell you that enough. Look at Glassdoor, look at comments, look at what people have been saying about the organization. Do some research on the person that you'll be interviewing with. Really start preparing. Really drill down in some of the questions. Take a look at the job description and look at some of the key things that are in the job description and map those back to your resume. Think about sample questions you may be asked that tie directly into that job description, and really start preparing and practice. It sounds silly, but practice in front of the mirror. Now, the phone interview do's. You want to make sure that you cut out all distractions. No barking dog, no doorbell ringing, no cell phone ringing in the background. Cut out all those distractions. Keep your energy up. So you want to physically smile when you're talking on the phone for a phone interview, because the person is trying to get a visual image of you, and if you're just seeming kind of a bit laid back or a little bit too casual, it's going to give them a bad impression. Now, this is hard in a phone interview, but I can't stress it enough. Try to read your audience. So make sure that if there's a lull, you may be losing their attention. If you're talking too much, you may be losing their attention. So try to be patient. Make sure that you have notes of what you researched in front of you so you can reference during the conversation. Be ready to take notes. Have a piece of paper. Have your resume in front of you so you can also reference your resume, and just be alert and ready to go. Now, looking at the video interviewing do's and don'ts. So these are becoming more popular, especially if someone is relocating for a position. The company may not want to immediately fly them out. They may want to do a phone and then a video interview. So you need to make sure that you really get familiar with your webcam and microphone. Make sure you really familiarize yourself so you know how they work. Make sure that your audio and video come through clearly and that there are no technical issues on your end that would hinder your interview. Also make sure that the camera is at eye level so that you're looking directly into the camera. It certainly will make a good first impression if you're looking down or looking up when speaking. Again, cut out all distractions. That goes without saying, but again, you have to also think about your surroundings. So, you know, the worst thing you want is to have, you want your room, the room that you're doing the video interviewing conference call in, you want to make sure it's neat and attractive, nothing visually distracting to the person. And you also want to make sure that you're aware of lighting as well. So put a light behind your computer so your face is illuminated. Avoid casting any shadows on your face. You should also keep in mind that the lighting can make your face shiny. So even if you're a guy, put a little powder on your face. It sounds silly, but it's a good thing to do. And then you also want to practice looking at the camera, again, making sure that's eye level. And you also want to think about the computer pop-ups so nothing's popping up during the video interview. And then you also want to make sure that, and again, dress to impress, even in the video conference call. You want to make sure that you don't just want to just dress from the waist up to say that you did it. It's certainly not good. So make sure that you, even though you're not interviewing for the position in person, appearances still matter. So when interviewing for a professional position, make sure that you still dress in a suit, even though only your top will be seen. Also, getting back to the surroundings, you want to make sure that, because there have been some situations where the interviewees they'll be dressed in a robe, there'll be a child playing in the background, or they'll see a partially, clad spouse running behind the person when the interview is happening. So you want to make sure that everyone in your household knows that you're going to have a video conference interview and to cut out all those distractions. So in-person interviews, of course, dress sharp. Don't wear anything that's ill-fitting. Don't dress too casual. Don't wear anything distracting. So, you don't want to have patterns. You don't want to have anything too flashy, nothing too trendy. For girls, no platform heels, no sundresses, nothing too revealing, nothing too low cut. It's a good idea to stick with the basics, black, blue, or gray suit for both men and women. For women, you want to avoid excessive accessories. You don't want to have your jewelry to make a statement. Sometimes if it's jingling, it's very distracting. People also recommend not to wear any perfumes or colognes. The person that you're interviewing with may have a sensitivity to allergies or fragrances. So it's better to play it safe. Always be early. You could come up with a parking situation that you weren't anticipating, so always be early. If anything, you'll be in the car, maybe checking your email on your phone before you go in. So always be early. Firm handshake. You don't want your hand to seem limp, but at the same time, you don't want to choke them to death with your hand. So you want to have that nice, firm, healthy handshake and make eye contact when you do the handshake as well. When you come in for an interview, bring your resume. Even though you assume they already have it, bring a nice portfolio with your resume. Make sure you have a copy for everyone that you're interviewing with. Bring a couple extras just in case someone pops in for a last-minute interview. Make sure you have a legal pad with some sample questions to ask. Have your questions in priority, maybe 5 questions in priority that you want to make sure you address them, because the person that's giving the interview may take care of some of your questions through the interview process. So have them in order of priority. Always make sure you make eye contact. And some lunch interview do's. So lunch interviews don't come up too often, but they still happen. I see them more with probably sales positions or positions where you're going to be doing a lot of meeting people in the job in social settings. So you want to make sure that you have a snack before the interview. You don't want your stomach to be growling, as you're sitting down. You want to make sure that you eat a meal that's easy to eat. I had one person years ago in an interview get crab, which I don't know why you get crab in an interview, but they got crab, and it was, I guess, crab was going everywhere. Not a good thing. Don't get distracted while you're in the interview with the setting or other people in the restaurant. Be friendly to everyone. So manners always count, and you're going to be assessed for those manners, especially in a sales-related role. So here's some interviewing do's. Make sure that you get your social media in order. I can't stress that enough. Google search. whatever you have in social media, even your LinkedIn, make sure that your LinkedIn matches your resume. I can't tell you how many times that will come up when I send in a resume and the hiring manager is already doing a LinkedIn search and making sure that everything matches. Be aware of your audience always. That's a little bit easier when you meet them in person. If you're losing their attention, if they seem to be looking away, chances are you could be talking too much. You could be commanding the discussion. So always be aware that you're keeping their focus and interest. Each step of the process, always, always, always be prepared. Think about the interview that you just had with that organization. Look back at your notes. If there are things that you did not ask the last time, make sure you ask this next time. Always be looking at the company, what they're about, the hiring manager, the person you're interviewing with. Do your research. Some helpful things that you can do when you have the face-to-face interview is compliment the interviewer. It shows, one, that you did your research, two, that you took the time well, you did your research, you definitely prepared for the interview, and you're also complimenting. Even if you compliment the company, the interviewer is going to take it as an indirect compliment. So if you come in and say, oh my gosh, I happen to notice that your company has expanded X%. I think that's fantastic. What's the goals for the future? So definitely think of an icebreaker. Make sure you relax and smile and take the mindset of a consultant. So a consultant comes in, they're understanding what the company, where the current state of the company is, what they're looking to accomplish, and then the consultant, just as by nature, will let the company know how they can help them get there. So you want to think about, you're going in, even though you're not coming in as a consultant, take on that mindset, because it projects a confidence, but not too cocky of a persona. Make sure you reference specific examples in your background. Don't leave that out, because I can't tell you how many times companies will interview someone, but they walk away not getting anything specific to chew on. Take the time to think about your tangible and intangible skills relating to the job. How have you done in activating a program during the event? How have you interacted with executive management? Think about your leadership skills. Companies, more than ever, especially as you interview for higher level jobs within business continuity planning, they want someone who can champion the program, and you're going to want to work in your leadership skills as you answer questions. Send thank you notes. And I can tell you, thank you notes, it's fine to send them via email these days, but make sure you follow up with a thank you note, thanking them for their time, thanking them for, let them know why you think this position is an excellent fit with your background, or summarize what the two of you have discussed, and then let them know that you look forward to moving forward in the process. You look forward to the reply. Genuine interest. So many times I'll have two candidates go in for an interview, very similar skill sets, but the person, the company, will go forward with someone who really shows that genuine interest. So things to avoid in the process. Don't command the discussion. Don't talk constantly about your background. The interviewer likely has questions they want to ask, and if you're not giving them the chance, they're going to kick you to the curb quicker than you can say resume. They're not going to even stand for it. So that goes in hand with talking too much. Read your audience. Know if you need to give them the opportunity to start asking some of the questions, or whatever it may be. If you talk too much, they're going to start thinking about their next meeting, next interview. They're not thinking about you anymore. Don't get into tangents. So if they ask you a question about, tell me about when you did a BIA, don't go through the full process of BIA to training, to doing a training program, to exercising the program. Stay on the question that you have been asked and focus on that question and give a nice, concise sample that coordinates with that question. Never lie or be negative. If they ask you a question, you haven't done it, tell me about a time have you used a specific software package. If you haven't used that software package, be honest and say, you know what, I haven't had the opportunity to use XYZ software package, but I certainly consider myself a quick study, and I'm certainly up for the challenge. Because they can always tell when you're lying. Eyes move, or you hate to get into a situation where you said you could do something, but you can't. Don't overdo it. Don't say that you can do everything in the world. You want to be a realist. Don't circumvent the process. If you're working with a recruiter, but you've been put in contact with a hiring manager, always follow up with the recruiter that you're working with. I can't tell you how much that would alienate the person that you're working with in HR or the talent acquisition team. make sure you always have initiative. Again, not too much initiative, but show interest, genuine interest in the job. I see that I'm starting to run close on time here, so I want to make sure I cover. Some of the slides are just easy wrap-ups. But here's some kind of awkward questions you want to make sure that you prepare for. So tell me about yourself. You know, this one always seems very easy, but I recommend memorizing a few general statements about yourself. You know, my name is blank. I have blank number of years of business continuity. My strengths include your 3 strengths. I'm currently looking for a position because of X reason, and this position interests me because of X reason. Think about how it relates to the position you're interviewing for. What are you passionate about? A lot of individuals will think that they should choose a work-related question. Not necessarily. This gives you an opportunity to have or include an interesting tidbit about yourself that will help you stand out from other people. So if your passion is health and nutrition, don't just say you like to work out and eat healthy, but instead describe how you've recently taken up yoga and you grow your own organic vegetables in your garden. The more details you provide, the more you show you're a well-rounded person, the better. Why are you looking to leave your current job? This is going to come up, and you must be prepared. Think about, don't want to reveal anything that's too personal, anything financial. You want to make sure that you stick to a professional answer. Maybe that you're looking for more of a challenge, or you're looking to enter a slightly different area within the industry. Compensation is going to come up, so you don't want to avoid this question. I always recommend giving a broad statement. You're looking for maybe, let's say, 100 to 120,000, and that you certainly would believe that the position would compensate for the skill sets that the person's looking to hire for. But if they ask you, again, what your current compensation is, don't try to sidestep that question. If they ask you what your current comp is, be sure that you're ready to answer that question, because if you don't, it doesn't show that you play nice with others if they were to hire you. And how do we know you'll stay? If you've been a job hopper, you want to make sure that you think about why you left different positions, and make sure you have answers behind all of those, because especially with human resources, it will be asked. These are sample questions to ask, sample things to take note of. And I think everyone will get a copy of this presentation. So, but again, you want to make sure that you have sample questions ready to go, ready to ask, because again, it shows that you're prepared. It shows that you put some thought into this as well. So here's some sample questions to avoid. You don't want to go in there and ask, what does your company do? You don't want to ask if they have a drug testing policy, even if they did. It just raises a red flag about your professionalism and how you would be in their organization. You don't want to ask how long will it be until I'm promoted, because the company will think that you'll be in the position for maybe a year and you'll get bored and start interviewing outside of the organization. You certainly don't want to ask about overtime, because it will show that maybe you don't want to put in the extra work. You also don't want to ask if there's any flexible work from home policy. A lot of candidates seem to think that there is a lot of flexibility working from home. I can tell you a lot of companies don't have this flexibility. And if you ask, it shows that you really don't want to go to work. So just be careful what you ask in the interview process. These are, again, very simple questions that you can search for online. Things to be prepared for that are outside of just regular business continuity questions. There's some, oops, let me go back. I was going to say that if you do go back here, hold on one second, let me go back. Again, if you're an animal, which one would you be? Tell me about a time in which you struggled with a problem. So think about some behavioral questions that you could be asked as well. Now, just to try to wrap up this conversation, I'm so sorry I'm not leaving a lot of time for questions, but I know that I'll be sent the questions. I'm sure I won't be able to go through all of them. But think about how to be a top talent. How can you always better yourself? How can you increase your skill sets? Really look at your long-range plan and making sure that your skill sets and your credentials, you're building upon that foundation of where you want to be 5 years, 10 years out from now. Take initiative. Try to create opportunities within your own company. This industry is evolving so very much, and you want to make sure that you evolve with the industry. Always, always, always be networking. The ACP is a phenomenal way to just stay networked within your peer group, because if you're ever looking for a position, I can guarantee you going to the meetings, being a part of the chapter, those individuals that you network with are going to go to bat and try to help you find that next job if you find yourself in between jobs. And again, your manager isn't always thinking about your next promotion, so don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to ask for additional challenges within your current company. Look at your tangible skills, look at your intangible skills. Really, again, guard your brand. So, you know, your brand can be destroyed at a bad Christmas party, at a bad social event. Always, always, always look at your goals, where you want to be, and don't just jump just to jump. Don't ever do that. Don't do it just for more money. Do a SWOT on yourself: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Career searching today, it's very, very competitive. More and more people are getting picked up. Just be patient through the process. Make sure that you're doing things to stand out among your peers. Always, always, always express the genuine interest. Remember the thank yous, and always be positive. If you're not getting all those calls back, think about it as numbers. So don't think about the response you're getting back from your resume. If you're reaching out to 10 people a day, 15, whatever it is, numbers, focus on that as your achievement for that day, because you can easily start beating yourself up if you think otherwise. And now I'll open up to questions, which I'm so very sorry I did not leave a lot of time for.
No, not a problem, Cheyenne. That's a great presentation. We're going to do this speed dating style, so I'm going to give you the questions. Go as quick as you can. We've still got a little bit of time left, so we're okay. Can you talk about hiring norms in international markets like Europe and India?
So anything international, I can tell you the companies always want to see someone who's locally based. So when I get a job in India, which I have worked before, and in Europe, they always want to look for people that are locally based within that location. Europe, I tell you, there's usually a period of 4 to 6 weeks notice. They don't just do the 2-week notice, they get a 4 or 6+ week notice. India is very, very quick, and it's funny because you may be, 2 hours away from where the company is, but they're very, very more open to relocating within India.
Okay. What do you think about candidates crafting different versions of their resumes to tailor them to different jobs?
Fantastic idea, because you can't always include everything in your resume, and you don't want your resume to be a long-winded book. So look at the job, and you can tweak certain things on your resume. There's a lot of keywords you want to make sure that you include. If anyone has any questions about sample resumes, I have a lot of great sample resumes that I can show and share with people that are, of course, confidential, but you want to make sure you include several different keywords, and as you look at this specific job, make sure that you tie in those keywords to the job opportunity as well.
Okay. One person made a provided a statement and wanted you to maybe comment or expand on it. Presume that compliments don't mean on someone's appearance or apparel.
Oh, yes. So when you're complimenting a person you're being interviewed by, you don't want to make them feel uncomfortable. So you want to make sure that you did your research on the company. So compliment them on something you noticed about the organization, about the company itself. Maybe you heard good things about their business continuity program from your peers in the industry. Compliment them on that. If you know that they've previously given a presentation or written a white paper, compliment them on that you happened to see them at a previous conference and that you really enjoyed their presentation. It has to be within the work realm.
Very good. When would you provide a 60, 90, 180 plan? And this person said they provided it as part of the thank you email after the initial face-to-face interview, and they were offered that position. And they said they were that way they were able to know the position pain points and could address specifically after more thought.
And I'm sorry, was that a question?
Yeah, they want to know, when do you provide it? When do you provide it?
I would say when you're at the very final stage of the interview, it doesn't hurt to bring in a brag book as well, maybe some letters of recommendation, but have some things so you're not overwhelming the person in the interview, and make sure that's kind of towards the final stage, because you want to make sure that there's genuine interest from them. You don't want to just bombard them with everything the first time you go in for an in-person interview. And sometimes when you work with human resources, you can ask them right in the very beginning of the phone interview process what the interview process is going to look like too. But I would say something like a brag book or kind of pinpoints on what you would do with the program. I would present that once you know there's certainly genuine interest from the company.
Okay. This person said, I seem to finish second with so many jobs. What am I doing wrong?
So that comes up, quite a bit. And again, there's a lot of things that come into play, not just your skill sets, but the culture of the organization. So always, always stay positive and always know that there is a good match. It's a good home for everyone. And if you finished second for a job and you didn't get the job, that means that job was not meant for you. There's certain dynamics that maybe you weren't privy to through the interview process that made it, that led you not to be selected. So I would always say that keep up what you're doing, keep up doing the research, keep on looking at your skills, keep on kind of following the recommendations I gave today, and keep a positive, keep your head up, and know that it's going to work out.
Okay. How valued are certifications in our profession?
So that's a great question. Most companies, they will prefer it. It'll be a plus. But bottom line, companies want individuals who have real world experience. If you're coming right out of college, you get a certification like even the ABCP, companies really want that real world experience more than anything else. So certifications are valuable, but just having a certification isn't going to guarantee you that job. You need that actual work experience. And not only that, you need to have those intangible skills of working across the organization from the end user all the way up to the CXO level. You need those leadership skills. And even if you're just 5 years in the industry, you can certainly possess those leadership skills up and coming. So think about with the certification, think about some of the intangible skills and your real world experience. And that's what companies are really zoning in on more than anything else.
Great. How long should I wait before expecting a call back after an interview?
That's a challenging question. I would say, if you don't hear from someone within 2 weeks, then at that point I would ping them, and you want to make sure you respect the process and go to the HR recruiter or whoever you're working with, because I recently had a candidate that approached the company, the hiring manager directly, and this actually happened a couple times recently, and the companies got very upset and came back to us and said, why is this person coming to us? So I would say give it about 2 weeks, but make sure when you do give the check-in to respect the process when you do that.
Okay. Should thank you letters only be sent via mail, or is it okay to send via email?
It's certainly okay to send via email these days, because if they get it via mail, it might already be too late. They might have already decided to go forward with another candidate. And if you don't have the person's email address that you interviewed with, send your email thank you letter to the person who coordinated the interview. Even if it's with HR or even if it's with myself, the recruiter, make sure that you send it to them and ask them to please forward it on.
Okay. And you answered several of the questions which had to do with what questions an interviewer can or cannot ask, and what questions a candidate shouldn't ask. But what does a candidate and or an interviewer do if the other person asks one of those taboo questions? How do you handle it?
So that's an interesting question. So if you're asked something that might be illegal, gosh, I've never been asked this question. I would say if it were me personally in that situation, I would let them know that you're trying to understand how the question is relevant to the job that you're interviewing for. You don't want to be controversial, but at the same time, you don't want to seem that you're not, respecting, authority to go forward. I would just probably assume that the person doesn't realize it's a legal question, and I would likely answer, I apologize, I'm not sure how that's really relevant to the position I'm interviewing for. I'm more than happy to be flexible and do whatever I can, but I'm not quite sure how it's relevant to the position we're interviewing for today.
That's a good tactful response. That's great. Cheyenne, that was great. For everybody else, if you hold on 1 second, we just got a couple things. It'll only take about 30 seconds. But first off, thank you all for attending the program, and stick around for just a moment. And before that, Cheyenne, thank you so much. Great presentation. And I'd also, again, like to thank ADG and their webinar experts for their support of our series. Thanks once again to Continuity Housing for sponsoring the ACP webinar series. And do remember to visit continuityhousing.com or leave a comment in the survey if you're interested in how they can help you out in your with critical employee guaranteed housing when you need it the most. Be sure to watch the ACP website for future webinar information. Be sure to let us know what topics you'd like to see. And as a reminder, this and previous webinars are recorded and then are made available to members on the ACP website. And finally, a very brief survey will pop up when you close your browser. please take half a minute to answer the questions. It really helps us refine these productions for you. Cheyenne, thanks again. Everybody have a great day.